Welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast, a podcast featuring real people sharing real stories about adventure out on the water. I'm your host, Shell Hart. Well, hello and welcome back to the Passages from the Heart podcast. I am your host again, Shell Hart, and I am really excited to sit down here to talk to you about some of the plethora of happenings going on in my boat life. Lots of change. The times they are a-changin', as the saying goes. And I'm going to go ahead and this is a little shout out to my buddy Jerome Rand of Sailing into Oblivion. Jerome, it's not a tasty, crispy BL, and that's not Bud Light, that's Busch Light, right, Jerome? But rather, this is my sparkling orange beverage, orange seltzer that I like to accompany with a little bit of dark chocolate. So I got all my goods, and I'm ready here to sit down with y'all and let's talk boats and some sailboats specifically. So where to begin? First and foremost, you know that I think you know that I had listed two of my sailboats for sale. The 2008 Com-Pac Legacy that I purchased back in the fall of 2023. And I had intentions of using that boat basically to trailer to different lakes around my state and chronicle those trips by letting people know who might be interested in sailing at these various lakes, what sort of what they might find as far as boat ramps, marina amenities, camping, restaurants, fishing, and the like. And it started out in my mind as this really cool project for the first mate and I to do. And back then, also, you might recall, I had conversations with the late Jerry Hutchins of Com-Pac Yachts down in Clearwater, Florida, which we had discussed the opportunity for me to become a Com-Pac dealer. And so as part of that arrangement, I would have had to have had a few different Com-Pac models on site or on hand, if you will. And so the idea is that I would have my Com-Pac 23, my 2013 Com-Pac 23, and I would have this Legacy, and then I would have to have purchased a new boat from Com-Pac, which I plan to purchase a Suncat, the little Com-Pac Suncat. That's a gaff-rigged cat boat, which we're going to talk a lot about that later on too in the podcast. But fast forward a year later, and then plans changed. We made several trips up to Lake Superior and just became completely enchanted with the region of the Apostle Islands, which is where I used to frequent my summers growing up with sailboat charters with my family. And our plans sort of shifted to let's get a bigger boat and let's, do some cruising up here. So enter into the equation my 2002 Com-Pac 25 SV Solitude. So we bought that boat a little over a year ago, and we had one season with her. We had a remarkable, speaking of Jerome Rand, we had a remarkable coaching session, epic coaching session with Jerome back in early June aboard Solitude, and went over all sorts of aspects about the boat. Because, when you go from a smaller day sailor, the 23 isn't super small, of course, it's not a dinghy sailor, but it is a very basic sailboat, comparatively speaking, to the Com-Pac 25. In fact, if you get a chance, just to kind of show you, you think 2 feet, 23 to 25, that's really nothing. Google Com-Pac 23, Com-Pac 25, and there should be in fact, it might be on the Com-Pac Yacht Owners Forum. That's cpyoa.com. And there are a couple pictures where it shows a Com-Pac 23 berthed right next to a Com-Pac 25. And it's really striking the size difference between those two boats. So moving from that 23-foot Com-Pac that I have up to the Com-Pac 25, actually was kind of a bit of a jump as far as not just size of the boat goes, displacement and all that jazz, but as far as the amenities that each boat has. So, for example, my Com-Pac 23, we have an outboard engine. On the 25, although you can get them with, or you could, and they don't make them anymore. Obviously, Com-Pac is closed, and I don't even remember the last year the 25 was manufactured, but I want to say it was around maybe 2005 or early, somewhere in there, maybe earlier. I'm not totally sure. Don't quote me on that. And they actually stopped making it, from what I was told or read or heard, is because that boat, the Com-Pac 25, cost as much for Com-Pac to build as it did for a Com-Pac 27. So they just decided to discontinue the 25. So anywho, getting back to the 25, yeah, there were a lot of systems on board that we needed to learn, become familiarized with. And, sort of the arrangement, I would say, that the first mate and I made when we made the decision to get the Com-Pac 25 is that, this is sort of our dream to do some cruising. And in our neck of the woods, being up in the Great Lakes seemed to make most sense for proximity because we don't live in the coastal areas. And we just said that we would try this out and see how things went. And the reason why I say that is the lifestyle that I have. I'm a farm owner, and I have a lot of animals that I care for, that we care for. 16, as a matter of fact, some horses, a donkey, cats and dogs. Yeah, we have a lot of critters, and, everybody has to have their own sort of caretaker when we travel. So there's people that are assigned or we hire to look after the equines, meaning the donkey and the horses. And then the dogs go to a kennel. And then 2 of my cats are diabetic, so they have to go to a special boarding facility. And then I have my other cats, which usually my sister looks after them for us. So it's a lot of kind of arranging and organizing. And the trip up there for us was about 8.5 hours each way. And what we tried to do is arrange to try to go once a month, which meant basically 5 days off a month. We were very lucky to be able to arrange this for our summer schedule. So travel Monday, boat time, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, travel back Friday. What we learned is that, the first 2 months, April and May, were used working on the boat, getting her cleaned and ready for our coaching session with Jerome in June. So, that takes care. And don't get me wrong, for me, working on the boat is, as meaningful to me as being out in the water and sailing. I love to work on the boats. I love caring for them. That's part of the joy for me and why I love to have boats in my life. But, it is also something to be said about getting out on the water with them and enjoying what it is that they're designed to do. So, once Jerome came in June and we had a great time with him, we went back up in July. Actually, we didn't go in July. Take that back. We weren't able to go in July. There was something that happened. Don't remember what, but we couldn't go. And fortunately, we had some wonderful dock neighbors that had offered to look after Solitude in our absence. And so periodically they would send me texts or, call and just say, hey, she's doing fine. We've been checking on her. And even though the marina walks the docks every day, 24 hours once a day, while that might seem like a lot, there's always something maybe possibly potentially catastrophic, which could happen. And then, maybe it's not caught until some hours later. So between the marina and between our new dock neighbor friends, we felt, better about that situation. But I'll just be honest. There was some stress on my part, worrying about the boat being so far away, and that if something were to happen, it's not a hop, skip, and a jump for us to get there and, figure out things. So that was a little bit of a stress in that capacity. And then combined, as we did it more into the middle of summer and into early fall, we came to the decision that it perhaps our lifestyles of farm lifestyle with cruising, the Apostle Islands lifestyle is at this stage in life isn't the best timing. And rather than keep the boat or even trailer it down to where we keep our 23 and like sell the 23 instead, for example, where I live, although I grew up sailing here in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, there was a very healthy sailing community scene, whatever you want to call it. There were 2 dealers in our metro area that sold sailboats everywhere from Catalina, San Juan, Santana, McGregor, all of the Hunters, all of those kind of mainstream boats that were manufactured. I think most of them were manufactured in the States, but again, I don't know that for sure. But my point is that there was a lot of access to help. Knowledgeable sailors and professionally skilled, tradespeople in that arena. But nowadays, it is not the case. There's no help. You're pretty much on your own. So if you have a smaller boat and you can handle, things that might come up, you might need to fix a fiberglass repair or, I don't know, rebed your chain plates or whatever. I mean, there's always projects we can do and tackle on our own, but my threshold for do-it-yourself DIY it kind of is peaks and valleys. Some things I feel really confident about, and others that I feel like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to mess this up more. And yes, while all of these folks will say, yeah, YouTube is awesome. You can just YouTube it and, figure out how to do anything. And I hear all kinds of people on sailing YouTube channels or sailing podcasts, toot that horn for YouTubing things. And I do think that, yes, there are definitely things you can do that for. But if you're going into a situation that you don't really have a lot of experience or knowledge about, how do you know that what you're finding, how do you know that video that you're watching, how do you even know for sure if that person knows what they're doing or are going about it the best way? And then you're following that advice, and maybe that might work in that situation for that person, but perhaps it might not work in your situation for you. And if you don't know really anything about it, how are you going to have enough critical thinking to really say, this is good or this is not good? So it's in situations like that I'm really talking about, where, maybe it's good to, work with a professional. Like, for example, when I was learning about battery systems on my boat, I reached out to, another shout out to my buddy, Owen Murphy of Meridian Marine Electrical. He's cruising right now on his Pacific Seacraft 34 roomy, gorgeous boat. I think he's still down in the South Pacific now. He left from Florida, I don't know, a couple of years ago, maybe, but he works remotely. And so you can connect with him. You can video conference, call, whatever, WhatsApp, work with him and learn from a professional remotely. And I decided to do that because I, felt really confident and comfortable with his credentials, and that I felt confident that the information that I was getting, especially where electrical matters are concerned on boats, because I don't want to have a fire. So I felt really confident in that rather than just YouTubing it. So hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, I'm digressing a little bit, but my point is that that's why we decided to not trailer the 25 to where we are locally, because there's just, with all the systems that boat has, there aren't professionals or skilled folks in my area to really help me if something were to happen. And that stressed me out. So if we can't keep the boat up there where there is access to professional help, but we can't get up there because of, other life circumstances that sort of conflict with what we're trying to do up there, and we can't bring the boat down here, then it just makes sense to me. This boat should really be in somebody else's care, someone who can really fully utilize and enjoy the boat for what she's designed to do. And that's why we made the you know, we were hemming and hawing about it, but we made the difficult decision that this is, at this point in our stage of our lives, is what the best way to move forward is. And when I posted the boat, you know, you get some tire, or as they say, keel and bilge kickers. And that just goes with the territory as a seller. That's just what you have to deal with. But there are ways to sort of, you know, reduce the amount of that you get, as far as people that are reaching out to you that are scammers or whatever. I just chose to try to list on websites that I felt were more geared towards people who, you know, probably are somewhat knowledgeable about sailing and sailboats, and not that I, you know, I think it's great when people want to learn. We all have to start somewhere, right? And that doesn't mean someone who's a newbie is someone who's not serious, because certainly there are those people. But I mean, I didn't list on Craigslist. I just was too nervous to do that. So I just stuck with some of these others that for me worked out well. So that whole transaction with rehoming Solitude happened like a week and a half ago, maybe, and it was really cool how it worked out. You know, when you know things are sort of like the stars all align, as the saying goes, and things just kind of happen. And I hate using this catchword organically because it's so overused, I know, but there is some real truth in that, and meaning that, you know, the conversations that you have between a buyer and a seller seem to kind of, you sort of click on some level where you can communicate effectively about things, and, you know, it just goes a lot more smoothly, and it just progresses in a natural way that things are going to work out. You know, it's pretty early to tell. I'm sorry, it can happen pretty early on when you can tell that things aren't going to work out. So now that I'm boat shopping and I've made some inquiries, I can tell probably within the first couple minutes of a phone call, yeah, I don't think this is going to be, this probably isn't going to work out. It's weird. It's a feeling sort of thing. But this gentleman, shout out to Captain Brian, Solitude's new owner. He hails from the Big Sky state of Montana. And it just so happened, just again, serendipitously, that this other Com-Pac friend of mine, when I bought Solitude last fall, I got an inquiry on my website from somebody who says, hey, I'm also interested in Com-Pac 25s. Can we talk about your boat? Because I'd like to maybe get one myself. So we connected, and that's Captain Larry. So shout out to Captain Larry too. And we had lots of conversations about Com-Pac 25s. And there was another boat on the market at the time, one that I actually had seen as well in person. So I sent him the information I had and a video that I made of that boat. Turns out he decided he wanted to move forward. He ended up driving all the way to California from Montana to purchase a trailer for a boat, a Com-Pac 25, that was located in New Jersey. So he's in Montana, he drives to California, he buys a trailer, brings it back to Montana. He has to refit this trailer to accommodate the Com-Pac 25 that he wants to buy. Once he does that, he then drives from Montana out to New Jersey to buy the boat and trailers it back to Montana. So I had remembered all of this about Captain Larry. And so when Brian contacted me about Solitude, I was all like, I don't know where you are in Montana because it's a huge state, right? But I have this other friend, Com-Pac friend, has a Com-Pac 25 in Montana. So I reached out to Captain Larry, and it all worked out that Captain Larry lived only 20 minutes from where Solitude's new owner lived. So he was able to drive down and see the Com-Pac 25 that Captain Larry has in person. And he was, you know, he had asked me about standing headroom, which is, you know, sort of a logical transition when you go from a small boat to a larger one. Most people would like to have that standing headroom because if you're, you know, spending time inside the boat, cruising and making things more comfortable, that's always a really great feature to have, of course. So 5 foot 10 inches is what the standing headroom is inside of a Com-Pac 25. And so he was able to get on the boat, you know, like lay hands on the boat, lay eyes on the boat, and really get a feel, is this something I can see myself having in my life. Well, he decided it was. So once he did that, he called me up and was like, I want to buy your boat. And so he came out to Wisconsin and we signed the deal. So it's really great if you have that opportunity to be able to actually see the boat in person, and get a feel for, is this really going to be, in our minds when we look at things online, we kind of think, we have these ideas in our head about what these boats might be like. And I totally have done that. And I've purchased 3 boats sight unseen. And 2 of those 3 worked out, pretty well, I think. However, the other one, probably had I seen it in person, I probably would not have purchased it. But this was all kind of during the peak of COVID. And you probably remember back then, everything was nuts about boats, the sales, right? There was people were just buying them up like crazy, and there wasn't a lot of inventory. And if you had any interest at all in a boat, it's like, buy it or somebody else is going to buy it, like literally within hours or less. So there was that kind of that FOMO, fear of missing out thing going on. And I fully admit that I sort of bought in, well, I didn't sort of, I did, I bought into that. And that's really, I don't think, a very good way to approach the situation. And I learned my lesson doing that. But you're not always in a place to buy a boat in person, especially for a boat like, Com-Pac. They're not as plentiful as Hunters or Catalinas and some of the other brands that were made. You typically see more Com-Pacs that are on the East Coast, certainly down in Florida where they were made. Sometimes a few on the West Coast, but in the Midwest, where I am, not so much. So it's really tough. So, that's it. Sometimes you are somewhat limited if you can't travel to see the boat. You're kind of going on a wing and a prayer to have, as the conversations you're having with the seller, to really cover as many bases and get your pictures, and making sure the pictures are current pictures, not pictures from when that person bought the boat, because I can't tell you how many times I ran into that situation where I'd want to, look at a boat and talk to the seller. And I always ask, I'm like, can you tell me when these pictures were from? And sometimes they'll say they don't know, or, or they'll say, they will admit that they're from when they bought the boat and they've had the boat for like 5 years or something. I've even seen pictures that people take from some old photo album. You can tell that they're in a photo album. They're faded or whatever. So it's, in this day and age, taking photos shouldn't be that are current. I mean, shouldn't be a huge problematic thing. I mean, sure, there may be situations that could make it difficult, but I mean, yeah, you got to find out that those pictures are current, because if they're not, that's not good. So yeah, I mean, you could probably have success with a long distance sale, but both buyer and seller really have to be willing to help each other along that journey, and not be, have their quarter run out, so to speak, with questions that buyers may have, and to the seller, and sellers being understanding of a buyer situation as well. So that's the situation I'm in now, because now instead of being a seller, I'm a buyer. I do have my Com-Pac Legacy, my 2008 Com-Pac Legacy. That boat, technically it is still for sale, but I do have a buyer for it. Kind of a interesting story. This gentleman is 89 years old, and he had been reaching out to me, I don't know, a few times each month since I listed the boat. It's probably been on probably almost 3 months now. And I did lower my price, because if you want to sell, the boat market is not what it used to be during COVID times. It's not a seller's market. It is definitely a buyer's market. And I priced my boats at what I felt were fair market prices of doing research. And after 3 weeks, when I was not getting as many inquiries as I was hoping to, I lowered my prices. And once I did that, I started getting lots of inquiries. So I knew that that was the smart move. And then, of course, as I said, I sold the 25, and I'm pretty certain the Legacy is going to be sold to this other gentleman. But yeah, he's 89, and he told me he's been sailing for 80 years, so since the age of 9. And he also happened to mention he's had over 100 sailboats in his lifetime. So I was like, wow, that's more than one boat every year. But I don't know. Maybe he was a dealer, or I don't know. I'm not really sure. But yeah, he hails from the shores of Lake Michigan, and he's telling me he's going to come get the boat. But I didn't mark the boat pending. I will tell you, I didn't get a deposit, which you might think that wasn't a very smart move on my part. But this gentleman, I've spoken to him many times, and I just said, no problem, because I want to be accommodating to him. He's got some other things going on in his life. Life happens, right? It does. So when people call about the boat, I explain that, there may be someone who's going to be moving forward, but I don't want to, say pending or sold, because until the check clears or the cash is in the bank, or whatever the saying is, the boat's available in my mind, at least. And if I were to put pending, that could turn away potential buyers. So I sort of think maybe just not putting pending, just leaving it open, and then still accepting those leads that come your way for other buyers, in case the other person, might not pan out or something for some reason. But I the guys assured me that he's coming, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt based upon, again, that's what I'm trying to say about relationship building between a buyer and a seller. You want that to be a good relationship, and one that you both feel comfortable with the transaction, that the buyer comes away feeling confident about the boat, that the seller feels confident about selling the boat to that particular buyer, sort of a thing. So that's just how I roll with it. And everybody's different. Everybody has a different maybe methodology, but that's what I do. So the boats I'm shopping for, the Com-Pac Suncat, a little over 17 feet, a little over 7 some feet beam, bigger than the Legacy. Not a sloop rig like the Legacy is. This Suncat is a gaff rig. It has a little cabin with I can't remember the berth sizes, but I believe there's something over 6 feet. So you could sleep 2 adults inside the cabin with room for a little porta potty. Kind of like the Legacy, I would say, in that regard. And there also is a day sailor version of the Com-Pac Suncat that I believe came out some years after the Com-Pac Suncat was manufactured, or started to be manufactured. And the day sailor version just has a really long cockpit with a little small cuddy cabin. It doesn't even have a sliding hatch. It has like a piece of canvas that covers the top of the companionway area, and it sort of folds or rolls on itself and then snaps back so you can get in and out of the companionway. It does still have drop boards or washboards or hatch boards, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, like you can't actually lock the companionway like you could with the Suncat or the 23. And I'm back. One of my dogs was having a little freak out barking at somebody, but probably UPS guy or something like that. Anyway, you cannot lock the cabin off or with the Sunday Cat, because there's no sliding hatch with a pad. You can't put a padlock on it. So inside of that little cuddy cabin on the Sunday Cat, there's port and starboard 2 what they call glove boxes. So maybe similar to a glove box on a car, or maybe a small safety deposit box. I haven't seen them in person. I've only seen pictures of them, but apparently those they're locked. You can lock things inside of those little areas inside of the Sunday Cat. But those two boats, especially the Sunday Cat, is a rarer boat than the Sun Cat, and certainly finding either one of those in the Midwest is pretty rare as well. Most of the leads that I have found tend to be in Florida or on the East Coast, and I've been reaching out to different sellers of those models. And the research that I've been doing, because I'm a little bit of a nut about researching boats. So with the Sun Cat, you know how they have like Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4 versions, like in the Com-Pac 23. Mine is a Mark 4, so the fourth iteration, if you will, of the Com-Pac 23. Sun Cats, I don't believe they didn't call them Mark this, Mark that, or whatever. But there was a transition period. I think it happened in 07 maybe, or 06, somewhere around there. And there were some changes made to the design. So with the Com-Pac Sun Cat, when it was first manufactured, it came with a stainless steel centerboard trunk, as opposed to later on, that became fiberglass. And then the other thing that they changed was that the initial models manufactured had mid-boom sheeting, but the latter version that I mentioned, the ones that have the fiberglass centerboard trunks, those have the sheeting is attached to the aft end of the boom for the main. So a little bit of a different setup. So you have in the older version, you had that little traveler there kind of by the companionway. And I decided that I actually prefer that. And the reason why is on my Legacy and on my 23, I have the mainsail sheet attaches to the aft end of the boom. And I sort of found with using both of those boats the last 4 years or so, that because of that, I have an outboard engine too, and then the tiller's there, and then the stern pulpit or the stern arch on the Legacy. It's kind of a little bit tricky sometimes getting to things, especially like getting to the outboard when the main sheet's there, and then it makes it trickier. So I actually thought maybe the mid-boom sheeting would be better for me, but the downside is that those models have that stainless steel centerboard trunk, which if the boat spends time in salt water can lead very likely to corrosion issues, which is something I don't want to have to mitigate or deal with, because again, where I live, there's nobody here to do that to help me with that sort of a project. So it's kind of, you're balancing these different things, these features that you want to have. And while the older boats are way more economically feasible and sort of where I would rather be, there is also, hey, maybe it might make more sense to look for a later model, more recent model that may, every boat's going to have an issue. Even brand new boats have issues. I just read about a brand new Sun Cat. Someone was posting somewhere about they just bought a Sun Cat, and their scuppers, the scupper tubes were evidently somehow weren't sealed correctly. And so they were getting a lot of water into the bilge as a result of that. And that was a brand new boat. There are going to be those sorts of situations too, I know. But so yeah, there's always, like as somebody told me recently, every boat always is going to have its issues. I'm not naive to that. I understand that. But it's still, at the same time, I cannot help but think that perhaps there may be some logic in looking for a newer model, but really what I feel like it all is going to boil down to is, again, when those stars sort of align, when things between me and a seller seem to be working out smoothly with conversations. I talked to a guy yesterday about a boat, or the day before maybe, anyway, about that guy's boat. And I kind of felt like, because I was asking a lot of questions, and I know maybe that can be annoying to some people, but I like to be an educated buyer. I want to know what I'm getting into. I want to feel confident about what I'm buying, because I've learned the hard way that when I don't ask certain questions, I have surprises that aren't so fun to always, deal with. So anyway, I had asked for some additional information, and that person said they'd get that information to me, and it's been over 2 days now. Yeah. And I haven't seen the information, and the ad actually isn't even available anymore. So maybe it's just that they sold the boat to somebody else, and, they didn't think to reach back out and say, sorry, I sold the boat, which I don't know. I do really believe in the communication really is key. Some people only want to communicate via text, and I'm not really one that's keen on doing that. And so that sort of can knock out of contention some boats for me, because I'm not willing to text, whether as a buyer or seller. I'm not doing that. I got to talk to someone on the phone. That's just the way that I do things with that. So yeah, those are the two models that I am considering. And as I had mentioned in my other podcast about when I was looking to maybe trade my Com-Pac 25, I had told you that that boat was a Horizon Cat, which is another compact model, but bigger than the Sun Cat and Sunday Cat. And I don't think that I would consider that again now, because one of the things that I've learned also with my experience having the 25, and even with my Com-Pac 23, the Com-Pac 23, I don't have a mass rigging system for that boat. Com-Pac used to make one that you could buy. A lot of other owners have fabricated their own. Yeah, I just not sure that that's really a road that I want to travel down. So the appeal for me with the Sun Cat and the Sunday Cat is the ease of rigging the boat solo, single-handed. And I really, where I am right now in my life, that's where I am. I that's one reason why I love my kayak so much, is because I can do everything myself with that boat. I mean, and it is a kayak. It doesn't have a sail. I have no rigging and all that to deal with. But still, I can, I made sure when I bought one that wasn't too heavy for me to load in and out of my truck, and get it from the truck to the water. I figured out a way to do that by getting a cart, or a dolly, as they kayak cart for that. And there's ways to, there's always a way, right? We have to adapt, make ourselves do what we love to do by figuring out the best way that we can make that happen. And so for me, for sailing, for right now, for where I am in my life right now, I really feel strongly that these two models are what's best for me. But in the future, I would love to get a big cruising sailboat again. That would be, I still think about that Tashing Toshiba 31 that I almost bought up in Lake Superior. That didn't work out. Like I said, I made an offer on that before we found the 25, and that boat is just, yeah, I'm in love with that boat. But my goodness, the level of responsibility with a boat like that, I'm just not able to give that right now. I don't have that time for where I am in my life right now to devote. And I don't like not being able to care for things. That makes me feel, that's not a good, warm, fuzzy feeling for me. I don't like looking out and seeing my boat neglected, or, that just, I can't do that. So I have to be realistic, and that's where I am. So those are the boats that I'm looking for. I reluctantly reactivated my Facebook account so that I can shop for boats on the marketplace, since it does seem to be where quite a few people are listing. And yeah, that's one avenue that I'm looking. Same for when I was selling. The sailboatlistings.com is another resource that I feel it has been beneficial to me, both as a buyer and the seller in the past. And the more commercialized sites like the Yacht World and the boats.com and the boattrader.com, sometimes you can find some things there, and I do check there. Of course, I still do check Craigslist. There are some good ones that could come up there as well. Yeah, and I don't know. The other thing that I do sometimes, which is kind of a workaround, is that if you search for a boat, like if you do a Google search on, Com-Pac Suncat sailboat, and it'll bring up, it has like results for all, and you'll see like it'll probably bring up boats.com and Yacht World and all of that, all that jazz. And then what I do instead is I click on images, and then from there I look at different images, and you can sort of figure out some, like the other place you can look are at different brokerages. There are some certain brokerages that I'm aware of out east and on the Great Lakes that I tend to frequent to see what inventory that they're getting in. And so sometimes you can find ads that way, or even through like yacht clubs. There are some little yacht clubs throughout the entire country. Like even where I am, there are little yacht clubs that people are selling boats, not so much sailboats, but they're selling boats. So if you can find a yacht club that has a decent sailing presence, you may find a boat that way too. And those little pictures, if you look through them, sometimes you'll find them that way. So it's kind of just another, kind of like a backdoor approach to looking for boats that sometimes I get some luck with. So yeah, that's where things are right now. And I'm going to continue to search, and hopefully my buyer for the Legacy will be able to come get the boat soon. And that's where I'll leave things for now, and look forward to catching up with y'all again soon. I have some inquiries or feelers out for guests. Hoping we can get some of those interviews lined up to share with y'all. And enjoy wherever you are in the world, enjoy whatever season it is. Here it's fall, and I'm enjoying the fall foliage, and it's getting, pretty windy almost every day, and the leaves are coming off more and more, and trying to mentally prepare myself for the months without water in my life. It's tough, but yeah, I'll get through it. I do every year, so I'll get through it again. Okay, guys, until next time, fair winds. If you are enjoying my podcasts, please consider following and or subscribing to my show. Your support truly means the world to me, as well as inspires me to keep bringing you stories from others out there with a passion for getting out on the water. Until next time, fair winds.